Anything else that I need to?
Good evening. I'm Sandy Landman from the Friends of the East Brunswick Environmental Commission. And I'd like to welcome you to our second Option Green program of the season. We collaborate with or partner with the East Brunswick Public Library to present these programs several times a year. The Friends of the East Brunswick Environmental Commission is a nonprofit, all-volunteer community organization, and we're very proud to partner with the library on other programs such as the Seed Library here at the right here at the library that Melissa Hosick helps us to run. You're probably familiar with our programs if you're not familiar with the name of our organization. Just to tell you a little bit about what we do. Some of our programs include the East Brunswick Community Garden, which is right here at the municipal complex. We will soon be announcing plans for the 2023 season when we open it up for new gardeners. So if you're interested in gardening, please pay attention to the announcements. We also do the Salamander Protection Program, which has gotten a lot of notice both here in New Jersey and outside of New Jersey, where we close Beekman Road in the winter when the weather starts to get a little warmer and it's rainy and the salamanders need to cross the road to get to the other side to the vernal pools. And if you've never been to a salamander crossing, you don't know what you're missing. So I hope you'll join us this January or February for a salamander crossing. We're also the coordinator and founder of National Moth Week, founded right here in East Brunswick in 2012, excuse me. It became very quickly an international citizen science project that has been observed in over 90 countries around the world and all 50 states, and in places like the Grand Canyon and Carlsbad Caverns and other exciting places, even the Smithsonian. So we hope you'll learn more about National Moth Week from us. We do have local moth nights here in East Brunswick, and that's another very fun event if you've ever been to one. We're part of the Sustainability Task Force, which is relatively new, and that'll be mentioned tonight again. The task force is working on reducing the use of single-use plastics in East Brunswick. So you'll be hearing a lot more about them as time goes on. And many of you are probably familiar with free cycling days. We just had a really successful one at the Community Arts Center 2 weeks ago, and we already have our date for the next one. The Spring Free Cycling Day will be on Saturday, April 22nd. Again, you can learn more about our events by going to our website, friendsebec.com, and signing up for our alerts, and you'll find out about the programs that we're having. Tonight, we're really pleased to have with us Dan Losik. He's the Director of the Water and Sewer Utilities and Department of Public Works here in East Brunswick, and he's going to be talking about water quality in East Brunswick and how it's monitored and maintained. Dan has been with the township for 25 years in the engineering department and public works. He earned his Bachelor of Science degree in engineering from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, and he holds licenses as a certified public works manager and certified recycling professional. So please help me welcome Dan Losik.
Thank you, Sandy. And thank you, Melissa Hosick, for inviting me and hosting this tonight, as well as the Friends of the East Brunswick Library, Friends of the Environmental Commission, Sustainability Task Force, members of the people here today, members of council, and Water Quality Advisory Board. So we're going to talk about water quality today. It's an important issue, especially nationwide, where there's shortages of water. In New Jersey, we're pretty fortunate. There were some measures taken long ago to ensure that we have a good water supply, and tying into sustainability, we have a plentiful water supply. So we tend to wake up in the morning, turn on our tap, brush our teeth, take a shower, and generally 99.9% of the time, water is available to you. So it doesn't happen by magic. There's a lot of things that go behind a water system. So this is a little slide of EPA of how to describe water sources, how treatment and storage. Those are basically the three stages of getting water to a home. The final stage being the distribution system. And you'll see that on the slide, 90% of the population gets drinking water from a public water system. So throughout the country, wells are, only maybe make up like 10% of the population's water supply. So the water utility, we're responsible for providing safe drinking water to the community and making sure it meets the standards of the NJDEP and the EPA. That's what we're tasked of doing. Drinking water is not really meant to take out tastes or anything like that. It's meant to ensure it's safe to drink. So the water utility, we have a distribution system of water mains, about 240 miles throughout the town, and 3 storage tanks, 2 of which have elevated, and that provides storage for us during times of drought or high demand, so we can meet the needs, as well as providing fire protection for any event that might happen. So we have to store the water in these tanks to be able to supply the constant demand for residents. We also provide bulk sales to 3 other municipalities, that being Helmetta, Spotswood, and South River. Some of those are supplemental to those towns. South River and Spotswood only supplement their supply with us, and Helmetta gets their water strictly from the township of East Brunswick. In 2021, we averaged 5.3 million gallons per day. That was our average for the year. We could peak up to as much as, say, 10 million per day in the summer. Of course, in the winter, it goes a little less. And if you break down from our ordinance and our rates for consumption, it's $5.51 per 1,000 gallons. So it's less than a little bit more than a half a cent per gallon of water. So if you're going to compare that to tap water, to a bottled water, that's a pretty significant decrease in terms of using bottled water. All right, if you can see that's just an overview of our distribution system. We have a let's see if I can do this. Up here is where we get our water from. This Middlesex Water Company supplies the water to down Riders Lane to our pumping station on Tice's Lane there, and then it gets distributed throughout the system. This is our Fern Road water tank, elevated tank, Summerhill Road one, which is near the mall, in the mall parking lot, and then our largest one is right behind our pumping station. This is where we supply water to Helmetta, Spotswood, and South River. And we also have interconnections with other towns in emergency situations where if we have the supply is compromised, like it was several years ago around the July 4th weekend, we need to get water from other areas. So we have interconnections with South Brunswick, Milltown, South River, Spotswood, and Helmetta. And those are on the right-hand side there. You'll see our contracts for those bulk customers that we have of what we supply to them. Sure.
What's the size and inches? What does that mean?
Oh, that's the size of the supply line that goes to them. Yeah, that's the size of the main that goes to that particular customer or interconnection.
Because I see the different sizes, so I was wondering, does the price we pay as a customer per gallon, is that a factor of the size, or
that would factor into how much water we could receive or distribute to them? So just how much we can get or receive from them, that would just limit that. That'd be a limiting factor. Okay, so in 1974, the EPA adopted the Safe Drinking Water Act. I apologize. So it came up with primary standards for drinking water throughout the country. And it listed contaminants that it would like to see addressed. So before this, it was kind of, there's no standards. So we had to ensure that we had safe drinking water for the entire country. So that's what the EPA came up with. And all these, they came with health-based MCLs. MCLs are maximum contaminant level goals. So everything that is in that primary standard is based on a health standard to make sure it wasn't detrimental to someone's health. With that, they came up with maximum contaminant levels for each of those contaminants. So you can have up to a certain level, cannot exceed that. They also came up with secondary standards, which are voluntary. Those are not health-based. Those are more to address taste or odor or things like that that may not affect health or won't affect health. In 1996, there was an amendment to the Safe Drinking Water Act, which included trying to have source protection for the various sources of water, and we'll cover those in a moment of what those are. Along with that, there's something called a CCR report. It's Consumer Confidence Report. So every year we submit a report to the public, or it's available to the public to look at our testing, how we did on our testing, any violations that we may have had, and that is available on the township website at any time. Along with that, in an amendment, they required licensed operators. So you had to have people who were educated and to pass exams in order to run these systems. And that would encourage them, or it requires them, to go and get continuing education credits to be current on all standards that may be updated, may change, new contaminants might be out there, new practices, and things of that nature. Yes.
Those contaminant levels changed since 1974?
That I am unaware of. I would only think that they would get more stringent if they did. Yeah, but I'm not aware of what the original levels were back then. Yes.
Sort of a strict question. Is this Safe Drinking Water Act a derivative of the 1972 Clean Water Act?
I believe so. Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Just curious.
And this is an this was an EPA act for the entire nation. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. What are the water sources? There's really two sources of water. There's groundwater and surface water. So yeah, groundwater would be, percolate through rock and other geology and settle below the earth. Whereas the surface waters, just like it says, is be a river, lake, stream, things of that nature. Of New Jersey's supply, 75% of New Jersey's water supply is surface water supply. I know back in the township, we used to have a mixed supply of groundwater and surface water. Early 1980s, from what I understand, there was the aquifer that I think is called the Farrington Aquifer, which we are part of, had saltwater intrusion. So they were limiting the amount of groundwater you could take out of the ground, and in which time the township decided to go to a surface water source, which we'll get into a little bit later. So we just have surface water only. There's no mixed supply anymore. Okay.
The salination of the groundwater was a result of pumping?
The influence of surrounding bodies of water. So the township back in about 1985 gets their water from the New Jersey Water Supply Authority, which is a state agency. And it was created at the New Jersey Water Supply Management Act in 1981. That act ensured that there was a safe drinking supply, plentiful. So when I talked about before, with some other states in the western part of the country where their supply is limited, they thought about this a long time ago to go to a sustainable source of water and made sure that we had water, especially in central Jersey, a plentiful supply. So that's why that was created. In California, yeah, Utah, all that area of country. So they acquire, finance, and construct and operate a large water supply system, which we'll get into in a second here.
Is that when you say authority, is it like a team, is a group of people? Is that what it is?
The Water Supply Authority.
Yeah.
It's a large group. It's a team, engineers, executives. Yeah, a large group. Yes. So we are part of the Raritan watershed. So that's where we get our surface water from. So if you look up in the top here, you have the Spruce Run Reservoir, and that is actually where the Water Supply Authority is located up here on, I believe it's Route 31. Then you'll have the Round Valley Reservoir here, and then you have the Delaware Raritan Canal, which our water comes from, and then is supplemented at times from these other reservoirs. So this is the feeder canal that would come into the Delaware Raritan Canal, and then our intake is in New Brunswick here, right along Route 18, where Middlesex water takes in our water to be treated. If you notice along Landing Lane in New Brunswick, if you're familiar with that whole canal, that whole area is all of our drinking water that comes into that's what's used for our town.
They're stuck there in traffic. They're at 287. That's how I remember it.
They make it nice to look at, though. So the Delaware Raritan Canal was originally a barge canal used to, take materials through the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. And then afterwards, it was rehabilitated to become a public water supply, in which the state took it over. And part of the Water Supply Authority, too, is to make recreational paths in between the Raritan River and the canal, too. So people take advantage of that, too. So part of our commitment or payment to the Water Supply Authority is for recreational purposes as well. So if they created a recreational component to the Supply Authority, and also they maintain the canal and dredge it from time to time and treat it for different things.
So we get water from both canals? Or?
We just get water from the Delaware Raritan Canal. It's one canal, although it has two names. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's also a river, so that's what's.
Yes. Yeah. So just the canal itself, the smaller portion, correct. Okay, so the Spruce Run Reservoir, that's an on-stream reservoir, so that'll hold 11 billion gallons. So we have lots of reserves. So in times of drought, they can collect and keep that on hand to provide drinking water for us and for other people that might be taking their drinking water from that canal. And that is also connected into the Round Valley Reservoir. And then between the two of them, you can get 241 million gallons of raw water per day to be treated. So here we're going to go to the Round Valley Reservoir, which was basically a geological formation that was a horseshoe valley, which they filled in order to hold extra water. So they took what was natural topography and converted it into something that would hold water and be beneficial to the rest of the state. And that water, they can hold 55 billion gallons of water there. And these are both maintained by the Water Supply Authority. And I'd like to share a little video here that they had on this, which I thought was pretty interesting on the reservoirs. Let's take a look.
We're going to be doing a reservoir structures refurbishment and resource preservation project for the Round Valley Reservoir that will enhance the stability and the safety features of the reservoir and ensure safe operations for many more years to come.
Well, the reservoir was built in the early 60s. There was a bowl-shaped valley that had 3 gaps in it that needed to be filled to create the full circle that makes up the reservoir. We're standing at one of them. This is the Round Valley South Dam. At the bottom of every embankment, they put in drains, because the fact of the matter is these embankments are made of soil and they leak. When the reservoir was filled, they leak.
All earthen embankments leak, but the engineers knew this at the time of the design and installed features to deal with that leakage. The drains that they installed were more permeable materials, such as sand or gravel or a mixture of those, and were placed strategically to capture the seepage that came through the impermeable core. The drains transport the water away from the dam in a safe manner. The seepage has been consistent since first fill, but it does rise and fall in a predictable manner as the reservoir goes up and down.
These seeps have always run clear. That means it's not carrying the soils that make up the embankment. If they start running dirty or muddy, that would be a concern, because you're actually transporting the structure, little by little away from the embankment. The new technologies that we have now will be used for the new rehabilitation of this embankment. Most importantly, with the rehabilitation, we'll be installing a new filtered drainage system on the embankment. What that will entail will be basically peeling the top layer of the slope. And the next step will be placement of a sand drain. A full layer of sand will be placed over the entire downstream slope. Once the sand drain is placed, the topsoil will be replaced and the embankment will look much the same. Some of the other work that we'll be doing involves grouting. The abutment to the embankment is where the existing valley meets the constructed structure. An area right at the abutments is somewhere where we might be experiencing some of our seepage. What the public will see will be drill rigs up on the slopes, drilling through the soils and into the bedrock below, at which time they will be pumping cementitious grout to fill the voids in the bedrock. The operating lifespan of such a structure like this is usually 50 to 100 years, and the work we're doing now is likely to extend it another 50 to 100 years. Some of the other projects we'll be working on, one of them is the dredging near the intake to the South Dam Tower. The South Dam Tower is where the pipeline comes into the reservoir. We pump water from our South Branch pumping station. While we're pumping, the sediment in the river tends to settle out in that area right there by the tower. When they originally constructed the reservoir, they had to excavate into the rock actually to create a channel where the water could get to the tower. So over the years, the sediment from pumping has settled there directly adjacent to the channel. We'll be dredging that extra sediment out so we can have full use of our tower again.
There could be local road closures. It's likely that the road over Round Valley Reservoir, County Route 629, could be closed for a period during construction. There could be impacts to other local roads, but again, we're in the planning and design phase and those impacts are still undetermined at this time.
Access to the boat ramp will be maintained throughout the project, even if the road is closed for parts of the construction. The authority will continue to work with Fish and Wildlife to continue to help them maintain the boat ramp and make it accessible for the different reservoir pool elevations.
We have a great website. It's www.roundvalleyproject.com, and we'll be keeping the website updated as we have more plans developed for the project, timelines, and there's actually an email list that you can enroll on the website, and that will give you regular updates right to your inbox. We know that a lot of people love Round Valley and love coming here, and we want them to be able to continue to do that as long as during construction it's safe for everybody involved.
So as we saw in the video, there's a significant amount of maintenance that has to be done to a reservoir like that, engineering, monitoring and things like that in order to maintain this supply for us. So it's not just an easy thing to kind of provide the water in the quantities that we require. So go to the next slide. Oops. Okay, so where does our water go from there? We have Township does not treat any water ourselves. So we have a contract with Middlesex Water Company, which has an intake and then treats the water for us. So part of the treatment or part of the contaminants or things that they might be treating for is microbial contaminants, inorganics, potentially pesticides, herbicides, organic chemicals, or radioactive contaminants. Those are the potential substances that may be found in our surface water. So this is the plant that our water gets fed to or gets pumped to. It's the Carl J. Olson water treatment plant at the Middlesex Water Company. And that construction you see there in the picture, I'll get into in a moment. That was a $50 million improvement to the treatment system that they installed recently. Yes.
Since the treatment plant is by the county, what township?
It's not. No, it's not. It's a private company. Although it's called Middlesex Water. Yeah, it's a private company. Yes.
Specifically for us, as in East Brunswick and a few other townships, right?
Correct. Yeah, they do supply water to other towns. When we got the contract with the Water Supply Authority, we worked it out where they would treat it for us. So they only provide treatment for us. So we have some benefits for buying in bulk. We buy our water in bulk from the supply authority and then have it treated by Middlesex Water. So there's some benefits to that, and that's how we purchase and treat our water.
So when you say we purchase, that goes out of the municipal budget, right?
The water utility, yes. So yeah, so we buy the bulk. They call it raw water from the supply authority, and then we buy the finished water from Middlesex, which is we just pay for the treatment of it. So this is a little bit of a diagram of how the plant works at Middlesex. So this is the Delaware Canal. We both share the same. The intake comes in for Middlesex. They do have both sources at for their company. They do have groundwater and surface water. In this particular diagram, this is just for surface water from the Delaware Canal. So this would be a representation of what our water would go through, this type of treatment process. So the water gets brought into the raw water pump station, and it gets fed to the plant. And you can see how this is a kind of little bit higher than down here. The entire plant is gravity fed. So they bring it in at the high side and they let gravity do the work for the whole treatment process. So that would reduce any kind of power or energy that was needed to process the water. They add some chlorine here and some caustic to control the pH. Then it will go into a mixer, and they add a pack here, which is like it's for flocculation. So they want to take the solids and they want to make the solids combine together. So then it creates like a sediment. So it'll settle out from the rest of the water.
That's another advantage of gravity.
Correct.
Because that helps the sediment settle down.
Correct. And then the pack it helps in aiding. It's a quick agent to kind of get everything to coagulate. And that goes into a super pulsator, which would kind of move water slowly down and up. The clean water then be drawn off the top. Any sludge or sediment would then be into a different area, and that's how they can separate everything. The investment I was talking about before with the slide, the $50 million investment here is in the treatment of ozone. So they use ozone as the primary disinfectant rather than chlorine. Chlorine potentially could have byproducts in large quantities, could be hazardous to health. So the amount of chlorine you use, if you can limit that, is better. Ozone is a really good way of quickly treating and disinfecting the water without having that byproduct. So they felt the need to invest a large sum of money to convert their plant to an ozone as the primary disinfectant. After it goes through a contact basin of ozone, it's going to go into a filter made of sand and anthracite. Anthracite is like a carbon-based material, and then of course sand is sand to kind of filter out anything there. Then it goes through another caustic here to again control the pH. Then we'll have something here called orthophosphate. Orthophosphate is added to the water supply to prevent corrosion. So it's a corrosion inhibitor. It's safe to drink. It's based upon the CDC. It's probably the most effective corrosion inhibitor you can add. So that helps anything from leaching from any materials that may be in the system. For instance, people have a large concern of lead. So this creates a surface that would prevent corrosion of any kind of pipe. So those materials would have less likely to leach anything out of them, because it's creating a surface and a kind of a barrier in between those materials and the water. Then it would be chlorinated on the way out. It would sit in a clear well for a while. And then again, the caustic would control the pH out to the system. So you kind of want a neutral pH going out. Okay, from there, it goes to our pumping station on Tice's Lane. And in the background here, you can see their 10 million gallon water storage tank that I was talking about before. So that's the largest one we have in town. And that would ensure 10 million gallons would ensure basically a water supply, alone almost for one summer stay. So at the pumping station, we have a water system operator, so that's a 24/7, 365 operation. We have people there all the time to monitor our system. And the operators are state approved to sample water, and they used our certified equipment, and we make sure that that's calibrated on the frequencies that are recommended. And we make sure they're within the limits of the manufacturer specifications for tolerances to measure what we're actually measuring. So we perform bacteria samples every week. We do 13 bacteria samples in the system, and I'll show you in a minute where those are, for a total of 52 that we must submit to DEP. Those are then sent to an independent lab. We don't know the results of the test. There's no way we can change anything. We take the tests, we take the samples, and they come and collect them. So it might be a little hard, but this is the sites we take our samples at. So you'll see a bunch of these ones, Rutgers Gardens. So it's on the extremities of the system. So that's where you're gonna have the most dilution of any kind of chlorine or potential of water that's been in the system for a long time. It's gonna have to work its way to the outside. So it's kind of like your fingers and your toes, and our pumping station would be your heart, right? So these are the extremities where you're most likely to have any kind of issues in terms of water quality, because it's been the time it's been sitting in a system for. Okay. Yes.
If there were an issue with bacteria that was found by the state, would they notify you? Is that ever?
Oh, yes.
How would that?
Yes, we would get notified, and then you'd most likely get a boil water alert, which hopefully you haven't heard of before. We would have to issue that. Yes, the state would immediately notify us on our deficiencies.
You would use Mixel for that?
We'd use whatever we had to for that. We use everything to our at our disposal to get that out. So we have water quality parameters we have to adhere to as well. So there's 10 sites per quarter we have to test for certain things, like the orthophosphate that we discussed a little bit earlier, and alkalinity and pH. So those are part of our quality parameters that we have to do.
And there's
Yes.
a question on the chat, asking how is the township preparing the contractor to treat our drinking water for emerging contaminants such as PFAS and PFOA?
Yeah, we'll get to that. And then I see another question. The aquifer under Edgeboro Landfill, I do not know about that. I don't think any towns use that. We certainly do not. Okay, so the entry point to the distribution system, we're required to bi-weekly take an orthophosphate and a pH sample there, and that is taken by the lab. So our certified lab comes and takes those samples at our pumping station at the entry point to our distribution system. Yes.
Is our water supply being monitored as others are for signs of certain viruses like COVID and polio? We've been hearing the stories that these viruses have been found in the, that's actually more, maybe it's sewage, not.
Yeah, it would be
water.
more effluent, yeah, and wastewater, yeah,
Waste.
yes,
So that has nothing to do with one.
no. So every Wednesday, we take our own sample of orthophosphate and alkalinity by ourselves to just double check what is taken by the lab so we can keep up on everything. Daily, we test chlorine, fluoride, pH, and water temperature 3 times a day. So those numbers are constant. We're doing those constantly. Arsenic? That would probably be from Middlesex Water on their tests, or I'd have to check on what the tests are from the lab. I don't know that. I can get that answer for you though. I apologize for not the answer for you. So we also monitor using analyzers that we have for chlorine residual, how much chlorine is left in the system at certain points of the distribution system at the extremities to make sure it's safe and has up to a certain level, and our fluoride, pH, and temperature. Lead and copper, we have 30 samples taken per year at approved sites that we have to go send into DEP to get tested. And then iron and manganese is tested once per year by our lab as well. So here where these are the disinfection byproducts that we were trying to eliminate, or Middlesex trying to eliminate or reduce by having the ozone system. Trihalomethanes are some of the byproducts of chlorine generation if it's too much of a concentration, and we're tested quarterly for those at 4 locations throughout their system, as well as HAA5s. This was one of the questions that we had online about some emerging contaminants or emerging issues that are happening. We're tested 1 time per year at a designated location for that. And New Jersey was the first state to set a standard for these contaminants. They are really derived from firefighting foam. And from what I understand too is like a breakdown of Teflon. So these things are getting into groundwater and surface water. So it's becoming more of an issue at certain concentrations. And then every so often we have UCMRs, which are unregulated contaminants, which we monitor for through DEP. And the next, the 5th phase of that will be taking place next year in January. So the township had decided back, I guess in the 60s, I wasn't around then, that we would fluoridate the water. And we have to maintain a level of 0.7 parts per million for fluoride, and that is to help in prevent tooth decay and help strengthening enamel for basically younger children. We're one of the few towns that do it. Not everyone does it, but that's the only thing we technically treat for. It's the only thing we add to the water ourselves. I'm sorry?
I guess that answered the question.
Oh, there's a question? Oh, yes, yes.
Mayor, maybe no. Kevin, might know, a previous mayor had ended the fluoride treatment.
No, it's been discussed, but it has not been taken out of the water.
Yes, it's been continuous since from what I understand, the 60s.
What are people's concerns with fluoride?
I don't want to speak for anyone. I mean, some of the comments that I remember that, you know, some people are, you know, they have differences of opinions. There are differences of opinions from different organizations, academia, things like that. How it's really an opinion type thing, which I have none of. People feel strongly both ways for whatever reason.
So I think the key word you just said is people feel strongly in different ways. But the facts, the data, the science, the thing, I can tell you that my kid's dentist who treats kids from the whole different towns in the county said East Brunswick kids have the healthiest teeth.
I think we're one of only, I believe only South Brunswick is the only other town. There's not many that do it, from what I understand, and I could be totally wrong, but that's from what I understand. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and you know, not to, there are other ways to get it if you don't have it in the water. So you know, we have it readily available.
No, actually, dentists do recommend a toothpaste based on the township. In our case, the dentists do ask, especially the out of town, in South River or something.
Yes.
They ask, does your township add fluoride?
Yes.
I know the answer without actually involved in the community, but they
Yes.
don't know the answer, so their recommendation on toothpaste.
Yes, for here, you don't have to worry about it. Yes, correct. Okay, so there's something that was passed by the NJDEP called the Water Quality Accountability Act, which made some requirements for water systems. We have to replace our water mains in a certain cycle every 150 years. As far as I know, we don't have any mains that old yet. We also have to provide cybersecurity for our SCADA system, which monitors our levels of our tanks, which monitors our pumps, or chlorine monitors and things like that, just to prevent any kind of breaches that anyone could kind of take over anything. Also, we were required to exercise valves to make sure they work, make sure we can shut off the water at different locations to control it. At certain intervals, we have to make sure that those valves work. And then we are required to test every hydrant at least once a year. So that's a good practice too. In case there's a fire, we want to make sure there's adequate fire protection for residents and commercial entities.
Should we be concerned if we live in an older neighborhood or in an older house? I worry that's one of my main concerns.
In what respect?
As far as the water mains, the pipes coming into the house, feeding the water,
No, I mean, you know, the only thing might be the composition or the material of the service line potentially, but in terms of the main itself, no, or flow or anything like that, no.
and the pipes that come into my house, my 200-year-old house, I should be concerned about. I mean, that's a township thing.
Well, the utilities is responsible up to what they call the curb box, which is a shut off near the roadway, not quite the right of way sometimes, but near there, and the rest is really the property owner's responsibility from there into the home. I do know as part of the water meter replacement program, we're doing a survey and trying to get all of the materials that go into the home, so we have a good inventory of what is out there, and then we could, if you know, either advise or come up with steps to notify on certain things that potentially could be a problem. So that was one of the that was part of one of the drivers to do a replacement program to have entry into a home, and then while we were there, change the meters out, and then have an inventory like the survey filled out of what size they are and what material they are, so we know what's in our system and we can report that then to DEP.
Which party or who's responsible for maintaining the service lines? To look for corrosion and things like that, is that the township or is it the Middlesex water?
So we were responsible, the township or the water utility is responsible for the system up until that curb box. So that's what the mains and up to the curb box. And then from the curb box into the home on private property, it's the homeowner.
So if I'm concerned, I should pay for testing possibly of the water that comes out of my faucet?
If you choose to, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Recommended. Who would I ask about that?
I mean, I could probably maybe provide something to you if you want, or if you want to give us a call at the pumping station, I'm sure they can help you out.
And Home Depot, you could get these little, you could send away your water for a test. I did that once. Was that reliable or legitimate?
I guess you'd have to depend on what they were testing for. So you'd have to kind of just make sure you knew what they're testing for and what you're concerned with.
Send you back a report.
Mhm.
You know. I don't know. It is, or when you should be able to get this, yeah.
Right.
Home Depot, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
Samples.
Yes, they do. You could do water testing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Home Depot does that, so I'm not sure what they're testing for, but they do testing.
Yes. So of part of that we discussed with flushing of hydrants, we have to do that once a year. So we are currently flushing hydrants right now. You see on the first area, we're in map areas 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the purpose of hydrant flushing is to make sure that we have proper flow through the hydrants, they operate, and also it takes care of any kind of sediment or mineral buildup. Certain pipes that are older may have a reaction. You get a mineral buildup on the inside of the pipe. So if you ever see kind of like a dirty water when we're doing that, that's basically the high flow and a scour that is kind of taking care of those minerals that may have built up from the natural water in contact with the mains of that material. Okay, so in 1982, when we were going from we were deciding if we wanted to be a groundwater source township, or go to a surface water, or go for a combo, they created a water policy advisory board to help set policy for what the future would be for East Brunswick and into determining where their source of water would be. And then it would the surface water option won out on that. So we do have a member here of the Water Policy Advisory Board. Thank you for attending. We go over lab reports. So we meet every other month, and we submit the lab reports to the advisory board, and they review our lab reports as well as any kind of customer complaints. And we discuss any kind of future projects and discuss the water utility as a whole. Okay, there was a survey conducted by the Sustainability Task Force for this event here tonight. So I broke down the results of the survey. So the option or the question was, do you drink? And the options were bottled water, tap water, bottled or tap water. So it seems as though 45% drink tap water. Bottled water exclusively is 15%, and both is about 40%. So it looks pretty limited in terms of the sample size that we have of people that drink exclusively bottled water. And I assume that this was part of the reducing plastics one bottle at a time as an addition to that presentation that was done in July. If you get a chance, I'd please look at it. It was very informative. Do you use filtered tap water? A majority of the people have a refrigerator style filter, it seems. Looks like 47%. Other people opt for a pitcher filter. In terms of the sample, if you had if they said both, I deemed it refrigerator, just to just to be upfront with how I dealt with double answers. Single-use bottles consumed a week. Good percentage, half of the people don't use single-use bottles, which I applaud as being part of the recycling department and being a certified recycling professional. I know that the problems that they can cause use of single-use bottles. Okay, and looking over the survey, looking at the comments of why people chose bottled, tap, or filtered, most of the responses tend to deal with taste. So the taste of the water varies upon the source. So surface water might have components of organic material in it because it's a surface water source. Like I said in the beginning, the water is safe to drink, and that's what the requirements we have are. It's not intended to be tasty, we'll say. So in order to, the acquired tastes of people, you can use filters to kind of remove some of those things if you so choose. If you don't like the taste of tap water and prefer, a different taste than you may be getting from the tap water. And there's an independent organization called NSF. If I can probably click on this too as well to kind of show you. Let's see if we can get that out. Hoping people can see this. You can go to this site and you can see what you want to reduce. If you want to reduce any kind of contaminants, you can click on this and it will give you a recommendation or a product type for what type of filter might be useful to you.
It doesn't show to people on Zoom if you have the other slides up.
Gotcha. Okay.
Swap it if you want.
No, they can use that link. You can use that link to NSF and then you can to determine what type of what you're looking to take out of the water or what you're looking to address.
There's a recommendation based on what I selected, the recommendation
For the type of filter. There's different types of filters. Some people have like a whole home filter, like reverse osmosis, which is a lot of energy. But from what I understand, removes all the minerals in it too, which then it's more of like a distilled water afterwards. So, it depends on the preferred taste of people, or maybe people with some sort of health issues where they have to treat the water a certain way rather than the general population. I see a question. While meters are being changed out as mentioned, will the resident be notified if we have a lead service line so we can think about replacement? You would be contacted at some point about that. Yes, that is, you would be contacted. If you do have a lead service, we would contact you on that. This was a picture sent to me at my email at one point. I believe it was off of Riders Lane. So you can see where sometimes single use are not necessarily single use. They also double as trash. So they're not just single use bottles, they become trash at some point too. So what has the township done? We have installed bottle fillers similar to the one in the picture. We have several at the municipal building. We have one at Senior Center, Community Arts Center, Daisy Building, Parks, Public Works. We have 3, water, sewer, and in total, we've saved 156,000 bottles by installing these. It's filtered, and we feel that we should practice what we preach.
And the schools are getting some or have some.
Yeah, I love them. I use it all the time at work. I make tea at work, or I drink hot water a lot of times with lemon in it. And I use it all the time. And I want to encourage our employees to hydrate as well, right? Because people on the asphalt crew can lose a lot of, their hydration throughout the day of working in hot conditions, and we don't want anyone to be dehydrated. So we encourage them to use that, and then they'll be more likely to do that rather than having to go buy a gallon jug and then it just be discarded. And so we highly encourage all of our employees to use that. Yes.
I am Ronnie Lee, so I play tennis. So
Yes.
our Brunswick Hills Tennis Center and our East Brunswick Landfill are two large institutions that we do have these.
Excellent.
However, now as part of the business community, is there something that the township can kind of like collaborate to encourage many businesses to have an opportunity to get a cheaper rate? What can we do as if this is cheaper?
Well, I think we can always discuss that. We don't get any kind of discount in purchasing them or anything like that, you know, ourselves. But I think that the benefit to that is the businesses have to usually pay for their recycling, so they don't have to.
Sustainability,
Yep.
Joint letter with our township to create this opportunity, administration, government.
Yeah, I'd encourage any business to get one, because like we discussed in the very beginning, it's a little bit over 0.5 cents per gallon for tap water rather than purchasing bottled water. And some of the big manufacturers of bottled water, some of the large soft drink companies actually use tap water it's filtered, so that comes from a public water source anyway. So the only difference is the filtration and the vessel it came in. So there's not much difference sometimes of the source of some bottled waters. So depending on the brand, you know, certain brands, and I believe they're required to have it labeled of what the source of the water is on their bottles.
So we have East Brunswick Restaurant Week going on right now. So is that a first step that we can take Letty's suggestions, how we want to move forward? We'll think about it.
Make a comment?
Sure.
It's pretty good. I'm president of nonprofit. And we focus on sustainable development goals set for the United Nations, and goal number 6 is clean water and sanitation.
Okay.
So I found this very helpful, and I like this concept. So I have 2 questions on that. One is, how much does it cost on average?
I think that whole machine is about I think it was about $2,600 for the whole machine, and then the filters occasionally have to you'd have to you know, change the filters. There's a light on it that would you know, tell you, just like your refrigerator would, the common refrigerator filters would tell you when it needs to be replaced based on you know, the flow rate through it.
These are similar to the ones in the airports.
Yeah, this is a what we have in town. It's a wall mounted unit. We used to have old water fountains. I think these are well, much more sanitary too. We do have the option, and it is ADA accessible, that people can use those, but the majority of people use them as bottle fillers.
Yeah,
So
the reason I'm asking about pilot.
okay.
I also land a small airports, so I could recommend them to use 2600.
No, and it is actually it's a great unit. I think in Public Works we've had it for a number of years. You'll see, you know, Public Works is pretty good at 33,000 bottles. A municipal building has 4 of them. Public Works only had really 1 of them. So you know, looking at the bang for the buck there. So most of that is some of our workforce. Like I said, it's going out to hot environments. They're working outside. We want to make sure they hydrate, because it does no good to have anyone kind of getting hurt or you know, or being dehydrated and not being of right mind.
Are they being planned to put some in parks? Are they maybe put outside? Like
That I don't know. Well, you need electric to it, so I'd have to, you know, I'd wonder about how that could be done.
Like in Heavenly Farms, I know they have regular drinking fountains that be.
Yeah, that's something we'd have to discuss. Yeah, we'd have to discuss that.
Vandalism,
But there are other ways of getting water in parks. We talked about the common meetings. Water in the park, yeah, getting the faucets or.
I do see a comment about boiling water for 20 minutes, sitting in sunshine. That is a true statement for chlorine. If you just let it sit for a while, just like a pool, when you get, chlorine loss in your pool, you have to keep adding chlorine to it. Heat does dissipate chlorine. That's why in the summertime, it might come in a little higher just to take into account the drop in the chlorine residual. Any towns with current serious water supply problems? Not that I'm aware of. The neighboring towns we supplement to, on occasion, we may supplement more to them. They have asked us to supplement more. I don't know if that's really a supply problem, or it could be an equipment problem with their wells, or maybe testing going on, or pumps not working to their full capabilities. And that is it for the slide portion. Does anyone have any questions?
Since you mentioned the word wells.
Yes.
I was curious, even as a kid.
Mhm.
So we don't have any, wells are not source for any of our water.
Not for the public water. There are certain properties in town that still have well water but are not connected to our system. In those cases too, you have to disconnect totally from the well so we don't get any cross contamination. You don't want to pull any kind of well water and have a connection in a home that could potentially go into our because of the testing and treatment standards. We don't want to have any kind of interconnects on that, or cross connections. Yeah, but there are not a lot. There are some homes in town still that have private wells, which are is the jurisdiction of the county health department. Yeah, so we don't have nothing to do with any kind of private wells, and none of our water comes from any ground source, underground source. So all of our water in town is surface water.
Strictly from the reservoir.
Strictly from that canal, yes. Yep, and reservoirs. Yep, correct. Yes.
From earlier. It was mentioned that if our water was compromised, we could get water from other connected sources.
Correct.
What types of connections, and has there been any contamination in the past?
I guess maybe the word compromise, I should have thought of a different word, meaning compromised in supply. We haven't had any problems with any kind of contamination that we needed to get water from somewhere else. But when we did have a major water main break on Riders Lane to our main supply line coming from Middlesex Water, it was necessary to get water from other municipalities to supplement, to keep the system pressurized and meet the demands. So those connections are vary in size, and they were on that one chart I had. So we have Spotswood, we have South River, Milltown, New Brunswick.
That was the only one I think that's been put up. There's more
Okay.
comments.
When water main breaks, or what is that all about? That seems to be.
Generally it's a because we have a surface water supply, the temperature is basically whatever the ambient air temperature is to a degree, right? So you're drawing off of a canal, and then you have differences of temperatures. You have some of the mains are metal, so then you kind of have different expansions, contractions in the ground, thawing, freezing, moving that way too. So any little bit of movement sometimes in that could cause a stress in an area and then cause it to break. Also too, sometimes you have, if for some reason there's an air pocket or a water hammer, if something's like fire hydrant, if you close it down too much, you're rushing. It's almost like a freight train, right? And that energy has to get dissipated somewhere. So if that energy wants to find the weakest point, and it happens to be a portion of the main, it's gonna break or rupture. So there's several causes. Most of the time, it's due to movement.
Was that expected to get better, that issue, as water main being replaced?
It will help, yeah, because some of the cast iron was popular years ago. It's more brittle than say ductile iron, which kind of replaced it. So you don't have as much I'll say flexibility. You can get away with a little bit more on the ductile iron of movement rather than the cast iron. And then, just sometimes too is different. Hopefully when they constructed things, they did them at a certain standard where they'd be supported well. What they did 70, 80 years ago may have varied where they didn't support things well. And then eventually over time, that support gave way, and then they have an opportunity to move too. So,
Well, those are not easy to prevent the other way.
no, not really. We do have some pressure monitors we just installed in fire hydrants that we're going to try to use to predict potential issues out in the area west of the turnpike. So say like out in Church Lane, Fresh Ponds Road, out that way. We do have a number, or we have had a number over the years on Riva Avenue, which we have 3 lines that go across the turnpike. It supplies water to that area, and it's basically dead-ended at each end of Riva Avenue. So if you do get some kind of transient spike, it's going to have to emerge somewhere, and generally at the end of the line. That's what kind of Riva Avenue is. So we're trying to use that to maybe predict if we see a spike in pressure going across the turnpike at those hydrants, then we can then go out there and perhaps open up a hydrant to relieve any of that potential water hammer or pressure spikes.
I was at the Manasquan Reservoir a couple weeks ago. It was very low from the down in Howell, which I think supplies water for Monmouth County.
That is also managed by the Water Supply Authority.
Oh,
Yes, that's their other end of their system. Yeah, I didn't include it in our slide here or our presentation, but yes, it's controlled by the Water Supply Authority as well.
Drought.
Mhm.
And I was wondering how that recent drought, which I don't know if we're even out of it yet, actually affected our water supply in the canal.
We weren't affected at all. I will say that I think our July numbers were elevated in terms of usage, but it did not come close to our 5-year high. Our previous high demand was back in August of 2015, and it didn't come close to that really. So it was quite a ways off that. So we have used more water in town, and we don't have a problem with supply. Yes.
So you don't test the water in houses at all?
No, we test the system as a whole. Yes. But if there's any issues with anyone has any issues with their water, they can always call the pumping station. Like I said, it's open, or there's people there available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Well, I'll get all those phone numbers and things, I'll make sure everybody listens.
Sure.
So
Yes.
the water readings, thank you very much for sending that to you. So how far along is Applebar community?
For the meters? About
22%.
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, we're looking for we're looking for more cooperation. What the part of that is too is to have advanced metering information, so we could read easier. Perhaps we could identify leaks that people might have. If you see, you can monitor similar to the old cell phone plans, right? Like, oh, you have so many minutes used, you getting close, right? You can monitor your own water usage. So I think that would help with, conservation and awareness, for everyone, because in my opinion, I think water it is a resource, but I think it's going to be becoming more and more important in the future. I think as we go along, I don't know if it's true, but they're saying, well, there's only a finite amount of water on the planet, correct? So they say every gallon of water has been through 7 people before you. So I mean, you think about it, it's only we have only so much water, so we've got to protect it, and we're fortunate enough that we don't really have demand issues or supply issues in this part of the country, and we have to be grateful and fortunate for that.
Actually, I'm going to ask a question. The lady asked, can we answer the last question?
How can communities help reduce contamination to our reservoir water? If you're near the canal, I mean, don't throw anything in the canal. They do, I think that the supply authority does monitor that canal. They do maintain it. I'm sure they treat it for certain things on a wide scale, probably mostly for algae blooms or things like that, if those things might emerge. But any kind of contamination would be, if it's not caught there, would then be on the treatment end at Middlesex Water.
Storm drains.
Storm drains, yeah.
Have to be cleaned and I mean, we.
Oh yeah, yes. Yeah, I'm grateful when people clean off the tops of the drains. The storm drains that we have on, a large portion, anytime we redo a roadway, we have to retrofit the storm drains to allow no greater than a 2-inch opening. That allows everything to stay above the surface, whether it be bottles, debris and things like that. We want to make it harder for things to get into the actual system. It's a lot harder to clean a pipe or open up a basin rather than going and cleaning a top off. So yeah, we do encourage anyone who may live by a storm drain to help us out. We have, I think it's over 4,000 of them in town. There's quite a bit. I can get that number for you. We do know of critical areas on low points that we do take care of, and there's certain ones we go out monthly to ensure that those are there's no debris in front of them. But during a rain event, things get carried away, not in that respect, but brought in front of the drain or an inlet or a pipe and could be blocked up. So we can go out there to be totally clear. As a storm event, in terms of it's really intense too, can then kind of plug up stuff and then cause damage for a lot of people. So we encourage people, if they can, to kind of help us out with that, and we're grateful for that. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone at home.
There's how many people in the chat?
There were over 20.
Oh.
Sure,
Right.
families that are Wilson knows.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone who's here.